Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the Golden Days. On today's show, we're going to talk about what might have been the most important addition this offseason for the Golden State Warriors. I'm not talking about the players. I know DeAnthony Melton could be a potentially awesome addition. Same with Kyle Anderson, same with Buddy Hield. But it's not the players that stuck out to me in terms of what gets me excited about this upcoming season. It's the coaches. They revamped the staff. It was desperately needed. And they've got two new faces helping to guide these young players, helping to help the veterans. And let's hope that their impact is positive. We'll break down what I mean by that. They were interviewed recently, so there's going to be a lot of sound on today's episode for Steve Kerr's new additions. Happy Friday again. Kick back and relax. It's the Golden Days.
They always find something to nitpick, and that's because there's expectations for us to win. It was a pretty crazy night.
Woo! Let's go!
In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Come on and break me off. Cause I get what I want and I like what I see.
Oh, you gotta love that Friday mojo, baby. We all have a good weekend. Basketball's almost here. I'm Cyrus Saatsaz, host of the Golden Days. You can follow me on Threads and Instagram at DogWild. The handle is super easy. I'm also over on Elon's excuse of a social media platform, the cesspool, the toxic bubble known as Twitter. I call it Twitter still. You can follow me there as well, at Surf Journalist. The program is available on all social media platforms at Golden Days Pod. And before we get into the assistant coaches and some of the interesting things they had to say, let's first give some love to the official sponsor of the Golden Days, and that is Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. We had our first game last night. That was a thriller. And Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. I'm sure if you were live betting that Chiefs-Ravens game, you were at the edge of your seat, and I hope you want some money. And if you think you know your stuff, get in on their $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker as you're kicking back and unwinding, maybe with a stiff one. Pour yourself a scotch on the rocks. I love those big old fat cubes where you just put one ice cube in there and it just slowly melts and percolates with the booze, and you've got yourself concoction for the weekend. Or maybe you just want to light one up and relax. Whatever it is, Bet Online can make you feel like you're in a casino with over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. I also want to give an announcement to the podcast listeners really quickly. Again, this show is still relatively new. We launched in June-ish, so it's been about 2 months now. And I'm cleaning up a little bit the ad placements for the podcast listeners. I've noticed that the system that we use here in terms of adding these pre-recorded advertisements, they're just being jumbled and placed in weird spots on the podcast. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, I'm working on improving those ad placements, and I hope you've noticed that with recent shows, and I hope you noticed that with today's show. I just want to give that some attention real fast. Regardless, I'm here today to talk about the assistant coaches for the Golden State Warriors. Jerry Stackhouse, Terry Stotts. These were desperately needed. One of my huge gripes last year was the fact that you oftentimes had Bruce Frazier, Steve Kerr's one of his best friends, maybe his best friend overall, from college. They played together at Arizona, and then Bruce Frazier's career was in basketball was over after that. I think he was doing like work in Hollywood. I don't know if he was coordinating stunts or what his work was, but anyways, so Steve Kerr brought him into the NBA when he became the GM of the Suns. This was back in approximately 2007. And then after that tenure ended, Bruce Frazier was out of basketball again. And then Steve Kerr brought him back in when he got the head coaching job in 2014 with the Golden State Warriors. The point is, look, Bruce Frazier, I'm sure, is a good dude, and I've interacted with him a bunch of times. I actually love talking surfing with him. He's got a surf shack in Baja that him and his friends, I'm sure, including Steve Kerr, frequent regularly during the summer. And in case you've never read it, I'm the only person on the planet who sat down and did an exclusive interview with Steve Kerr himself. That interview, if you just Google Steve Kerr surfing, you can find that story. The point is, I'm sure Bruce Frazier is an amazing person, but he should not be the lead assistant for a team with Stephen Curry on it and who's trying to win championships. And last year, he was the guy sitting next to Steve Kerr. That is not a recipe for success, surrounding yourself with yes men. So kudos to Kerr. He took the initiative this offseason. Bruce Frazier, and again, who knows what the catalyst was? Who knows who the individual was specifically, directing these edicts? Maybe it was Joe Lacob himself who came in and was like, Steve, you got to ease up with the whole, having your buddies as your lead assistants. We've had phenomenal basketball minds in years past on our staff, right? You think back to Alvin Gentry, you think back to Luke Walton, you think back to Mike Brown. And last year, in the last couple of years, ever since Mike Brown left, the Warriors haven't really had that on their coaching staff. And so thankfully this year, they brought in Terry Stotts as the number one assistant. And then they also brought in Jerry Stackhouse. And the team next week, and we're recording this on Friday, September 6th. So starting on the week of September 9th, the Warriors are going to have a coaching retreat. And then the season's almost here. I am so excited that we are almost at that time where we're going to be watching NBA basketball again. I've been jonesing, I've been itching for it. Anyway, so the coaches are going to have a retreat next week. And then we're off and running soon after that. The players, a lot of them are also reportedly coming into town starting next week to start prepping for the season ahead. And before we get into the sound bites of Terry Stotts and Jerry Stackhouse, the Warriors made them available, of course, for their media partners, and that includes the official flagship radio station of the Golden State Warriors, 95.7 The Game. And this is something we did not get a lot of with Kenny Atkinson. Kenny Atkinson routinely would turn down interview requests. We never really knew what his philosophy was, but we never knew really what he was about at all because he secluded himself. And that's obviously not going to happen now that he's the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. But the point is, with these two new players here, they did interviews with the radio station 95.7. And I pursed through the whole things for both of them. Terry Stotts did a really short interview. It was about 9 minutes and change. Jerry Stackhouse was on for 20-something minutes. So he was giving a lot more answers that had length, that had nuance and detail. Regardless, I perused through those. I found what I could find because most of the interviews conducted were this was my reaction to hearing the ridiculous questions asked by these two.
Man, you corny.
Yeah, it was corny. And then that's a new soundbite we now have. It was corny. It was some of the corniest stuff ever, asking Terry Stotts about like the We Believe year. Like if people are tuning into these interviews, they want to hear about what these coaches have planned for the upcoming season. Before we get to that, though, I want to replay a sound clip that was played on this show some years back. And Traveling Urquidez, I see you in the chat. I'll get to you soon. But Steve Kerr, this was back in April during one of his exit interviews. He talked about some of the things that have gone wrong with the Warriors. And this was the first time he admitted that maybe some changes are needed on a coaching level, on a philosophical level. And this led to some of these changes on the coaching staff. Let's hear from Steve Kerr again. This was right after the season ended. And this was Steve Kerr admitting that maybe some change is due for a team that for the last 2 years has been disappointing. Here's Steve Kerr.
Steve, on Tuesday night after the game, you had a moment of self-reflection and you said you need to be better, especially with the offense, getting what you want out of the offense. What did you mean by that?
I think the offense can help the defense. The game has always been connected. And I think, we've had a a unique style for 10 years here that's mainly based on the off-ball movement of Steph and Clay, the unique nature of Draymond's being a point center, for lack of a better expression. We have unique players, so we've played a unique style. Some of it planned, some of it simply morphing into a way, the way that we've done things, a way that we've played. We've been turnover prone for a long time, partly because we freelance quite a bit. I feel like the last couple of years, our team hasn't been built to withstand some of the mistakes and the turnovers, but also it hasn't been built in a way to support some of that freelancing. So I have to take it on myself to help the players be put in better positions to make better decisions, if that makes sense. One of my most important experiences in basketball was playing in the triangle offense in Chicago. I learned so much basketball from Tex Winter and Phil Jackson. And what Phil used to tell us was, we don't run the triangle for Michael and Scotty. We run it for the rest of you guys. We can run anything for those guys and they'll be fine, but we run it for the rest of you guys to help you make decisions, to help simplify the game. And I'm not going to run the triangle, so don't, put that in a headline, but I need to make, I need to create a simpler format. We're still going to do a lot of the things that we've done. We can't go away from what has helped make us successful. But I think I need to teach it better. I need to simplify some things. I need to give our guys maybe a little better template for how we're going to accomplish it. Because like I said, when you connect the game and you can make better decisions offensively, it translates to the defensive end and you become a better team. So I've got to do a better job of that.
And that soundbite was music to my ears. It was an admission of accountability. It was an admission that what has been in place for the last 2 years has not been working. And this has led to these changes on the coaching staff. And Terry Stotts, if you're unfamiliar with him, he was the head coach of the Portland Trailblazers for a large number of years, had relative success there. Obviously, his success was impeded by the Golden State Warriors. Every time Dame Lillard and company thought they had a team ready to make a serious run, there was Stephen Curry, there was Draymond Green saying, "I don't think so. You've come up in the wrong era, my friends." And so Terry Stotts is now the lead assistant. He replaces Kenny Atkinson, which is music to my ears. I have not been pleased with Kenny Atkinson the last 2 years. And the results show. I mean, Mike Brown had that defense locked down. Mike Brown had the respect of the players. Mike Brown was is a workaholic. For people unfamiliar, when he announced he was leaving to the Sacramento Kings, that was one of the alarms ringing off in my head, given I've known, and anyone who covers this team extensively, who's actually going to practices and so forth. And I'm going to be trying this year to make a decent amount of appearances with practices and press conferences and so forth. I think media day is the end of this month, around September 30th, before the team goes for a week to Hawaii for some chemistry building and why not, right? Go to Hawaii for your training camp. They're going to play a game out there as well, I believe. So Terry Stotts is in. Jerry Stackhouse is also in. And as you're going to hear from these sound bites, the appearance seems to be that Stotts will be an offensive assistant. He's going to help Steve Kerr in terms of revising and modifying the offense to make it a little simpler and to make it a little more pragmatic for certain players that may or may not be thriving under this system. One thing that Steve Kerr said, I don't think it was in the same press conference. I couldn't find the soundbite, but Steve Kerr also admitted that over the last 2 years, the team's strong emphasis on rebounding may have hurt the team slightly because he's been so focused on his team, maintaining strong rebounding numbers despite being the shortest team in the NBA. But like anything, it takes energy to do so. And the energy expended to be so focused on rebounding and to be a strong rebounding team, Steve Kerr admitted could have been a negative in terms of the offensive side of the ball. Because again, we all have a finite amount of energy. There are exceptions to this rule. Clearly, some athletes, it's ridiculous how much energy they have out there. I think Stephen Curry is one of the clear-cut examples, but even Steph wears down sometimes, and you see his shot struggling as a result. So anyway, so there's going to be some changes coming to this team from a coaching philosophical perspective, and I could not be happier about that. And Traveling Euclides, by the way, is asking about Western Conference predictions. Like the prediction stuff, we'll drop that down in great detail once training camp starts, once the preseason starts. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't have a prediction for where the Warriors will exactly settle this year yet, but what I can tell you is this roster is currently constructed. It's way too wing heavy. It's not heavy enough on size. And what I mean by that is like the Warriors still lack someone inside who can give them easy buckets, someone who has an excellent post-up game, who can back defenders down and put up an easy two when needed. I don't think they've really they've usually struggled in terms of roster construction to have a player like that on the team. Kevin Durant comes to mind as a perfect example of someone who did fit that mold. But then David West is also someone who fit that mold. But besides that, the Warriors never needed a player like that because they were the exception to the rule when it comes to relying on shooters. Most teams, nearly every team in the NBA, who has thought that they can survive and go deep in the playoffs based off a heavy dose of shooting, has failed. But the Warriors were so good at it, led by Stephen Curry, led by Klay Thompson, the Splash Brothers, that they could overcome the typical deficiencies that come with being a shooting-reliant team because those shots don't fall as much in the postseason. But Steph was so good, Klay was so good that you could overcome not having someone to give you easy buckets when the pressure increased, when the clock was winding down and defenses tighten up and shots don't fall as easily. Well, those days are over. I mean, you still have Stephen Curry, but Klay was not the same Klay anymore. And this team is lacking in terms of having an inside presence who can get you easy buckets. Trayce Jackson-Davis will help defensively, but Trayce Jackson-Davis is not a shooter, at least not at this point in his career, although there are some reports that this offseason he's going to be focusing on his offensive game quite a bit more. But that part of it concerns me, is what I'm trying to say, in terms of this Warriors roster construction. And ultimately, from my perspective, from what I've observed, this team is going to need Jonathan Kuminga to become an all-star level player. This team is going to need Brandon Podziemski to prove everyone that wanted him to be traded for Lauri Markkanen wrong by stepping up his offensive production, both as a passer, as an outside shooter. They're going to be so reliant on those two and Trayce Jackson-Davis stepping up their games far beyond the levels they had last year if they want to be a legitimate, real contender. That's my take on it, what I see so far. But again, let's see the preseason. Let's see some training camp footage and coverage, and I'm very curious. I want to see some of these athletes in person. I'm looking forward to that at the end of this month. I'm just seeing what's in the chat real fast. So I'll give you some predictions soon. And Traveling Orchidas real fast before I play some sound bites from Terry Stotts and Jerry Stackhouse, adding, do you ever wonder if Steve Kerr struggled to get Tatum in the game during the Olympics? Do you think that bids Jonathan Kuminga more bench minutes? I've said that on the show before, Orchidas, that I saw a correlation there. Whether there actually is a correlation or whether it was strictly a coincidence, but yeah, it's Steve Kerr just seems to have some sort of aversion to wing type players, whether it's, Tatum, Jonathan Kuminga, which is weird considering he played with Michael Jordan. You would think like he would understand and recognize the importance of a player like that. But who knows? All I do know is if Steve Kerr continues treating Jonathan Kuminga the way he has the first 3 years of his career, where last season he averaged over 19 points a game since the start of the year when he started getting real minutes, yet he still finished 7th on the team in total minutes. That has to change. That has to change. So anyways, let's hear from the assistant coaches. And first up is Terry Stotts. Again, long career with the Portland Trailblazers. And before I play these sound bites, I also want to just revisit really quickly what happened for the Warriors last year, offensively and defensively as a team. Offensively, the Warriors finished the season a year ago 8th in the NBA in points per game. They averaged 117.8 points per game, which is good. It's not Warriors championship level when they were number 1 in the NBA in this category routinely, but 8th is not awful. Some of the teams ahead of them offensively were the Minnesota Timberwolves, who had, let me, I was looking at the defenses. I'm sorry. The number 1 offense last year, scoring wise, was the Indiana Pacers, who averaged 123.3 points per game. The Celtics were second with 120.6. OKC third. The Milwaukee Bucks were fourth. The Atlanta Hawks were fifth, which is kind of gives you a clue of where being dominant offensively doesn't always translate to success, right? The Hawks have an awful defense, but offensively, led by Trae Young, they were fifth. The Lakers, interestingly enough, were sixth in the NBA in offense last year. Then it was the Dallas Mavericks and then the Golden State Warriors. If you're more into net rating, the Golden State Warriors were ninth in that category. A net rating referring to points per 100 possessions. The Warriors' net rating last year offensively was 116.9, meaning they scored 116.9 points per 100 possessions. And if you're looking at that category, the number 1 team in the NBA in terms of offensive rating was the Celtics at 122.2, followed by the Indiana Pacers, OKC, the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Bucks, the Knicks, the Mavericks, and then the Warriors. There was a considerable discrepancy here between points per game, where the Atlanta Hawks were fifth, and then their offensive rating, where they dropped to 12th. So they averaged 116.4 points per 100 possessions, yet the Hawks averaged 118.3 points per game total. But regardless, the Warriors were ninth in that category. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, and I bring these stats up largely because these are the challenges that Stotts and Stackhouse face taking on these roles. Defensively, the Golden State Warriors last year, and this is where they particularly struggled, they were 18th in terms of opposition points per game. What that means is that the Warriors last year gave up 115.2 points per game. That was good for 18th out of 30 teams in the NBA. The best defensive team in the NBA, no surprise, were the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Knicks were second. The Miami Heat were third. Orlando was fourth. And the Celtics rounded out the top 5. And that's how dominant the Celtics were last year. Second in total points per game offensively. Fifth in total points per game defensively. The Warriors dropped to 18th in that category. When you look at the same stat from net rating, referring to points per 100 possessions, the Golden State Warriors were 15th in the NBA in defensive rating. Again, that stat refers to points given up or scored per 100 possessions. Excuse me, the Warriors were at 114.5. And the leaders in that category in the NBA, the Minnesota Timberwolves, yet again, number 1, both in points given up and in defensive rating. They had 108.4 points given up per 100 possessions. The Boston Celtics were second in that category, followed by the Magic, the OKC Thunder, excuse me, and the Miami Heat round out the top 5. So this is where the Warriors stand in terms of what they did last year. Good, not great offensively, average to poor defensively. And these are the challenges that Terry Stotts and Jerry Stackhouse face. Now, let's start off with, again, Terry Stotts did a 10-minute interview, and most of that interview was filled with the corniest questions imaginable, questions that sounded more like the hosts were trying to buddy up with them than giving the audience what they want to actually hear. It was, and again, the best way to summarize the interview was,
Man, you corny!
Big time corny. Now, it was ridiculous. With that said, there were a couple of sound bites that were interesting enough to play on this show. The first one was Terry Stotts and the youngsters, right? This, and more specifically, Kuminga, more specifically, Podziemski, Trace Jackson Davis, Moses Moody. And let's hear what Terry Stotts had to say about his approach to coaching these young players? Well,
some conversations with Steve about it, and really, I don't want to take away from what they've done so well. They've been such a good read and react team. They move well without the ball, and incorporating some of the new players. Well, I think Buddy Hield will be great in it. Kyle Anderson will be great in it. D'Anthony Melton. I think the new players will come in and fit well. Getting the younger guys comfortable with moving with and without the ball, setting screens on ball, off ball. Freeing Steph up a little bit more if we can. He has a knack of getting open anyway. But, my biggest thing is not to change too much of what they've done. But I think Steve wants to tweak some things, do some things better, throw away some things. And I think that's what this next month is going to be for.
That's your introduction to Terry Stotts, ladies and gentlemen. And I wanted to add, by the way, Caesar Saldana TV in the chat writing that the Warriors only need to get to the playoffs via the 1 through 6 spots. In other words, to avoid the play-in, and then Stephen Curry and Draymond Green will do the rest. Well, I do agree for the most part with what you're saying. Easier said than done, considering that, again, 3 of the last 5 years, the Warriors missed the playoffs. 2 of those years, they were play-in teams, but getting out of the play-in has proven to be challenging. Bad Hombre, love your name in the chat, writes, how would you go? How would the Warriors look if a coach actually developed Wiseman, Jordan Poole, Moses Moody, and Jonathan Kuminga? Welcome to my frustration the last 2 years. That question right there, the answer to that is that's why Bob Myers left. Because Bob Myers' vision for the team was the year following the title, 2022, 2023. That was supposed to be the plan. Develop these players, set your organization up for the next phase of hopefully success, while developing guys who can support Steph, Dre, and at the time Clay. But again, Steve Kerr thought it would be wiser to give Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb minutes. Don't get me started there. So anyways, now continuing on with the sound bites. Terry Stotts, I found one more that I thought was worthy of playing, or at least worthy of being interesting. And this was Terry Stotts saying that he thinks being with the Warriors is a great fit for him. I like hearing that. I don't want a coach coming in here just because he needs a job, right? I want a coach coming in thinking that his mentality, his philosophy, his goals are in line with the team he's going to coach. And Terry Stotts is optimistic. I love the optimism. Let's hear Stotts talking about his fit with the Golden State Warriors and how he likes what this team brings to the table. Here is Coach Terry Stotts.
I think it's really a great fit for me at this stage of my career. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully I can bring something to the table. I have a lot of respect for Steve and their staff and what they've done. I think there's still a window. You say last year was a tough year. They won 46 games, and 46 used to be a guaranteed playoff spot. Right. But the West is so tough. It's wide open, and I think we're going to be in the mix. And that's what, in the West, if you're in the mix, anything can happen.
Yeah, and again, love the optimism. Would like to add to Stotts that in at least the 2000s, there were seasons where 48 wins was not enough to even make the playoffs, not even to get in the top 8. The Warriors were victims of that. There was another season where 50 wins was not enough to get into the playoffs. So it depends on the year. 46 is nothing to scoff at, but it wasn't enough. And so they're going to have to win more, especially with this deep Western Conference if they want to have a shot. Now, the defensive side of the ball, this is going to be one of many areas that Jerry Stackhouse is going to work on. And Stackhouse, in the first of the 2 clips I'm going to play for you, talked about just how the whole process started of him being added to the Warriors, mentioning that the Warriors reached out to him. And he also adds in this soundbite what he hopes to contribute to this Warriors team. Here is the new unofficial defensive coordinator of the Golden State Warriors, Jerry Stackhouse.
Where everybody expects us and wants us to be. When I was talking to Steve and obviously talking to Mike, it was, more about trying to get some help on the defensive side of the ball, as well as just kind of, again, having a former player with so many young guys. And obviously I was just coming from an environment for the last 5 years where I've been, really close and tied into this, this Generation Z. You know what I'm saying? They're a little different. I mean, not in a bad way. They're just a little different. And I think being able to have that experience the last 5+ years, obviously, the grassroots stuff as well. We got a lot of young guys. Kaminga's got unbelievable talent. Pye, all these kids are Moody. And just being able to, hopefully I played this position as well. So being able to share some things there. But just understanding, and it's a process. It's not always given right away, and being able to handle those highs and lows. I think I can speak to that. But just on the defensive side of the ball, just being able, I feel like this team won, 46 games last year. Dre missed a ton of games. I just think with him back into the mix, hell, I may not even be here. So obviously, Kenny got a job. They were looking to kind of shake things up a little bit, and I'm glad I got the call and have an opportunity to be able to help any way I can. And I don't feel like I'm limited to defense or offense. Obviously, I've been a head coach for a while, so it's just whatever. We're gonna have our coaches retreat, in a week or two, and whatever assignment that I get, I'm just gonna try to do my best in it to help us get back to where to where everybody expects us and wants us to be.
Yeah, and where everyone expects you and wants you to be is at a championship level. So welcome to the team, Jerry Stackhouse, former great player, might I add. And he does bring coaching experience, both at the G League level, as an NBA assistant. 1 year he was an assistant with the Memphis Grizzlies, and then he was a head coach over at Vanderbilt before he got hired by the Golden State Warriors. So again, super stoked that Stack is part of the team, and him just being not just a former player, but a former phenomenal player. He's not some scrub. He was a legit, almost reached greatness, just not quite, but he was a damn good player. And that garners respect from the players you're coaching, right? They're not looking at you and just having that, that side eye, like, what the hell does this guy know? Like he never played. He has the respect of the players in that regard. And one final soundbite for the show as we wrap it up. Jerry Stackhouse was asked which players not named Stephen Curry and Draymond Green he's most excited to work with. So we're going to hear what his answer was to that question. And he also added that, and this should get all you folks excited, that the Warriors players, I said this at the beginning of the show, I'll say it again, they're coming back in town next week. The Warriors coaches are having their retreat next week. It is just around the corner, folks. We are almost there. Regardless, here is Jerry Stackhouse talking about the players not named Stephen Curry and Draymond Green he's most excited about. And yeah, Stack, take it away.
Start the build. I like the young guys, man. I like Kaminga. I like Trace Jackson. I saw him just getting better. I mean, he came out of nowhere last year. I thought he was unbelievable for the team as a rookie. Just watching film on him, I think he has a lot of potential to, obviously he's playing at 5, but when I saw him, I was like, man, you're not a 5. You should think like you're a 4. I mean, I think he could really sit down. I watched him sit down and guard point guards in the summer league and on switches and things like that. Really excited about him, Moses Moody. Again, when I saw him when I was in LA as well, actually he was at Arkansas, and this thing to be this young group, Pozinski, the things that he brings to the table, his toughness, especially on the defensive side. I mean, having a young guy like that lead the league in charges taken, man, just a lot of promise with these guys, and then with the vets that they added in, Buddy and KA. I was with KA in Memphis, and he's just kind of a jack of all trades, a guy that you can plug into a lot of different positions, and hopefully, Buddy has softened the blow of losing Clay. Clay has been a staple here for a long time, and being able to provide some shooting. So man, it's across the board, and hopefully I hit them all. I mean, Looney, all these guys, man, just having an opportunity to see them up close in person. I'm excited to get going. I think a lot of them are coming in town next week, and we're going to start the build.
Going to start the build, baby. I love the fact that he even gave Moses Moody his due. Very curious to see what happens with him and with this team. And Sophia Jones, who is going to be joining this program every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. That is officially a regular guest, a regular segment that we're going to be doing each week. And she provided some phenomenal insights when she joined the program this past week regarding Buddy Hield. I had no idea that he was an excellent off-the-ball player, that he's got a motor. He moves. He makes life difficult for off-ball defenders. So, yeah, I'm getting buzzed. The buzz is building. I'm getting excited. I'm jonesing. I can't even articulate myself over how excited I'm getting that basketball is slowly creeping here. Want to add for next week, again, Casey Stern, he's had a crazy summer. So, and the good news is there's virtually nothing going on with the NBA right now. So NBA Coast to Coast will be back next week. It is going to be a regular Wednesday segment, 1 p.m. Pacific time. Sophia Jones every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Next week on the show, besides those two, former Golden State Warriors general manager, Gary St. Jean, the Saint himself, is going to be coming on this program. And if you follow me on Threads, I made a post there that if you have any questions you want me to ask the coach and the GM, fire away, and I'll happily shoot it his direction. I'm going to be asking St. Jean about Bob Myers. I'm very curious to know what his thoughts were about how Myers eventually left, and his thoughts on how Mike Dunleavy Jr. is doing as the new GM. And Urquidez, I agree with you, man. Saint's the best. So he'll be on the show next Tuesday. And again, if there's anything on your mind that you want me to ask him, follow me on Threads, @DogWild. Just reply to the post I made. It's near the top, soliciting any questions that you may have for Saint, and I'll happily bring it up with him. And Gary St. Jean. Another thing I really want to ask Saint, and I'm looking forward to having him on the show for this, is who is responsible for Stephen Curry? Like, who's responsible for drafting him? I know Larry Riley gets the love, but if you've seen Larry Krueger on this show, Krueger firmly believes that the genesis of the Warriors dynasty, who's most responsible for that, is not Larry Riley as much as it is Don Nelson. And Don Nelson is Gary St. Jean's boy and vice versa. And I'm very curious to hear from Gary St. Jean what his thoughts are on who is responsible for getting this whole run started. Damien LaRoche, I haven't seen you in a while, man. Good to see you. Damon, Bruce, and I will absolutely work together. Damon covers all the sports. And this is the slowest time of year for basketball. So unless there is a basketball discussion to be had, we're not going to do a show. So him and I will be working together and collaborating because I love Damon. I think we produce some terrific magic together. And he will be back. We will work together again and do dual stream soon. It's just right now, from Damon's perspective, it is football, but we'll be talking hoops together soon. Urquidez, I don't understand. You're Gary St. Jean. Yeah, Gary St. Jean is still in Massachusetts. That's where he's going to join the program from next week. Yes, he still lives there. He mentioned to me that he loves giving his grandkids a ride to school each morning. He's still out there. And Damien LaRoche also adding, that the chemistry between Sophia Jones and I is awesome. Thank you for the kind words. She's awesome. And like I said, Sophia Jones, enjoy the time that she spends here. Enjoy the growth you see from her as a broadcaster each week. She's going to be gone one day. She is going to be a star. And she's going to go from being a regular weekly contributor on this show to someone that will come on whenever she's available, because she's going to get hired and snatched up by someone big time soon. It might be the Valkyries. It might be NBC Sports Bay Area. Whoever it is, they're going to steal her away from me at some point. So while I have her, enjoy every Tuesday at 3 p.m. And Urquidez, I miss you too, Damien. And Traveling Urquidez wants to know from Gary St. Jean if he has any Run TMC stories. Again, if you just reply to my posts on Threads, so that way I don't miss that question, I will happily ask him. Yeah, no doubt about that. So we'll do that. Otherwise, have a great weekend. I think that does it. I personally am digging my new sound drop because there's a lot of corny crap in this world, and I want to call people out.
Man, you corny!
And of course, anything from Dave Chappelle is incredible. That's it. We'll be back soon. Welcome, Terry Stotts. Welcome, Jerry Stackhouse. Let's hope their contributions are awesome. Thanks, as always, for joining the program. And we'll be back next week. Until then, have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.